The necklace began burning the bride before the Dragon King finished fastening it. At first, no one in the Vale bridal court understood what they were seeing. The music did not stop. The choir kept singing beneath the high black arches. Court ladies kept holding their cups of ember wine in both hands, smiling as if politics could not bleed in public. Bride heiress Isolde Harrow stood before the ash altar in a gown of pale gold, her throat lifted for the royal gift. Dragon King Lucan Dray lowered the necklace against her skin, and Maerith Vale, standing with the lesser artisans behind the third row of pillars, felt the last warmth in her chest answer like a wound being reopened. She had made that necklace, not for Isolde, never for Isolde. The chain was black gold, thin as a promise. At its center hung a flame-shaped stone that looked like amber until it caught living heat. Maerith had shaped every curve with hands that shook from exhaustion, had breathed into it when her own fire was almost gone, had whispered Lucan's name into the ember core because he had been burning with dragon fever and no healer could cool him. The flame stone did not know jealousy. It knew source heat, donor breath, and the difference between a gift worn by the saved and a token forced onto the unbound. Lucan had worn it for 3 months. He had lived because of it. Now he was giving it to another woman as a bridal token. Isolde smiled as Lucan's fingers brushed the clasp. "Your court honors me beyond measure, Majesty." Lucan's face remained carved from royal restraint. The bride of Vale should wear a flame worthy of the throne. Maerith's fingers closed around the seam of her gray sleeve. Worthy. That was what he called it now. Not hers. Not saved. Not given in the dark. While fever smoke blackened his breath and his dragon shadow clawed at the walls. A courtier near Maerith whispered, "That is the Vale girl's work, is it not?" Another answered softly, "Was. The king purchased it. Artisans do not own what crowns require." Maerith kept her eyes forward. She would not weep in a room that had already decided tears were proof of smallness. Lucan released the clasp. The necklace settled against Isolde's throat. White gold fire erupted from the stone. Isolde screamed. The bridal choir broke into silence. Ember wine shattered against the floor. The court surged back as the necklace flared so bright it threw dragon-shaped shadows across the altar walls. Isolde clawed at the chain. "Take it off." Lucan caught her wrists before she tore her skin. "Hold still. It's burning me!" The flame stone pulsed once, twice, then bent its light across the court. Not toward rank, not toward bridal law, toward the source heat it had been taken from. Every face followed it. Maerith stood beneath the pillar arch, ash gray, silent, with no jewels at her throat and no flame left in her hands. Lucan saw her then. For one terrible heartbeat, the bridal court disappeared from his face, and something older than kingship looked through his eyes. Recognition. Then suspicion crushed it. "Maerith," he said. Not gently. Not yet. The way a king spoke when the room needed a culprit. Isolde staggered back from him, tears bright but controlled, one hand trembling over the angry red mark at her throat. She cursed it. Isolde had not understood the flame, but she understood a room looking for a woman to blame. Maerith did not move. The necklace still burned, but the fire no longer leapt wild. It stretched toward her like a creature trying to reach the breath that had fed it. Isolde saw that too. Her pain sharpened into calculation. She cursed it because she could not bear seeing another woman wear what she made, Isolde said, voice breaking at just the right edge. "Majesty, I told you the artisan was too attached to royal favor." A murmur rolled through the court. Attached. The word was clean enough for public use. It meant desperate, jealous, displaced, foolish enough to mistake kindness for promise. Lucan stepped down from the altar. Every dragon banner above him stirred, though there was no wind. "Did you bind anything to this necklace?" he asked. Maerith looked at the flamestone, then at the man she had saved while he slept through most of the saving. Yes. The court inhaled. Isolde whispered, "There." Maerith's voice stayed low. "I bound protection." Lucan's jaw tightened. Protection does not burn a bride. False ownership does. The words crossed the hall like a blade drawn slowly. Living flame could be carried by the life it had saved. It could not be transferred as bridal property without the donor's release. Isolde's eyes flashed before she could hide it. Lucan saw the movement. Or perhaps Maerith only needed him to. He stopped 3 steps from her, close enough that she could see the faint fever shadow still beneath his collarbone, the dark veining that should have killed him by winter if her flame had not held it back. His gaze dropped to her hands. They were bare. No ember glow beneath the skin, no maker's warmth, no living flame at the fingertips. Something changed in his face. Not guilt. Not yet. But a question had entered him, and questions were dangerous in courts built from certainty. "What did you put inside it?" he asked. Maerith almost laughed. After 3 months of wearing her heart against his pulse, now he asked what it was. He had trusted the necklace enough to survive inside it, but not the maker enough to ask what survival had cost. Isolde stepped between them before Maerith could answer. "Majesty, please, you cannot let her turn this right into a maker's grievance. The necklace was given to the crown. The crown chose its bride." Maerith looked at Lucan over Isolde's shoulder. "And did the crown ask what it cost?" The court went still. Lucan did not answer. That silence hurt more than cruelty. The flamestone suddenly blazed again. Isolde cried out as the chain snapped open at her throat without any hand touching it. The flamestone fell, but it did not strike the floor. It hung in the air. Then it drifted across the bridal court and stopped before Maerith Vale, burning with the exact color her hands no longer could. It did not choose her. It recognized the source it had been taken from. A royal fire priest backed away from the altar. "Living flame," he whispered. Lucan turned toward him. "Say that again." The priest's eyes stayed fixed on the necklace. "Majesty, that is not crafted ember." Maerith felt the whole court looking at her emptiness now. Her throat tightened, but her spine did not bend. The flamestone pulsed like a failing heart. The priest whispered, "That necklace is carrying someone's last living flame." The priest did not say whose. Not yet. But every eye in the court had already found Maerith's empty hands. Lucan looked at those hands too. He had worn her sacrifice as medicine, then offered it as ornament. The necklace had not defended her. It had only proved the crown had tried to gift something still alive inside another body. And for the first time since he had placed her gift on another woman, the Dragon King looked afraid. The necklace had not defended Maerith. It had only recognized the source the court had mistaken for property. That was not enough to save her. In Ember Vale, a woman could be proven wounded and still be blamed for bleeding in the wrong room. House Harrow understood that before anyone else recovered. She stood at the ash altar with the burn mark rising red across her throat, her hand pressed delicately over it, her face pale enough to look injured and composed enough to look innocent. "If the flame is hers, Majesty," Isolde said. Then she placed herself inside a royal gift without witness. The court shifted. There it was. Not jealousy, not theft, something worse. A woman, hidden around the king's throat. Maerith felt the accusation enter the room and find chairs waiting for it. Lucan did not look away from her empty hands. The fear in his face had narrowed into command. He turned to the fire priest. "Contain the necklace. No apology. No belief. No protection shaped like tenderness. Only an order." 2 ember wardens brought a black glass reliquary from beside the altar. The flame stone resisted no one. It drifted inside when the priest opened the lid, still pulsing faintly toward Maerith, not choosing her, not clearing her, only answering the breath that had once fed it. The priest sealed the box. The court exhaled as if glass could make truth safer. Isolde lowered her voice. She let you wear it for months, Majesty. If that was living flame, then she had access to your body, your sleep, your fever, your weakness, without bridal law, without council witness. Lucan's jaw tightened. Maerith saw the old fever shadow flicker beneath his collar. He saw her see it. That was the worst intimacy left between them. The knowledge of what she had survived beside his bed while the court called her attached. Open the living flame statutes, Lucan said. The priest hesitated. Here, Majesty, in this court. That cost him something small. Not enough. A clerk hurried forward with a bound book edged in copper. The priest opened it on the altar where Isolde's bridal vows had been waiting. His voice trembled only once. Living flame may be shaped into vessel, weapon, ward, or healing ember, but remains bound to source heat unless donor release is witnessed. A carried flame may protect the life it was given to preserve. It may not be transferred as property, dowry, bridal token, sale object, crown inheritance, or conquest prize without release from the donor body. The court went silent. Maerith did not feel vindicated. She felt tired. The law had always existed. It had simply waited until she was humiliated to become useful. Lucan looked at her. Did you sign release? Maerith almost smiled. Did you ask for one? His face closed. Good. Let him stand inside that answer. Isolde stepped forward. Pain sharpened into reason. Majesty, the crown purchased the necklace through proper artisan channels. The Vale workshop accepted royal coin. If Maerith failed to disclose a life-bound component, then the fault is not the bride's, nor the crown's. A murmur of agreement moved through the noble rows. Isolde had not denied the law. She had moved the fault beneath Maerith's feet. Lucan turned to the clerk. Bring the maker ledger. Maerith's chest tightened. No, she said. Every face turned. Lucan's eyes narrowed. No, do not open my labor record as if it is a public wound for anyone bored by a ruined wedding. Isolde's expression softened in the cruelest possible way. If you are innocent, Mistress Vale, the ledger should protect you. Maerith looked at her. Protection is not what courts call it when they cut a woman open politely. A few courtiers looked away. Lucan did not. Until the ledger is read, he said, you will stand as temporary flame, witness to the object. Temporary. Witness. Not maker. Not donor. Not the woman whose last heat had kept him alive. Maerith's voice stayed calm because rage would have pleased too many people. Do not call me witness while my empty hands are still being treated as evidence of theft. The words struck him. She saw it. Not softness, not regret. A crack in the certainty he had been using like armor. He looked toward the reliquary. The necklace remains contained. No one touches it. Isolde said, including Maerith? Lucan's answer came after one breath too long. Including Maerith. He had contained the necklace. Then, with one delayed breath, he contained her too. The room heard it. He still feared her hand near the thing that had answered it. Maerith turned her eyes from him before the old part of her could hurt too visibly. The maker ledger arrived under a red cloth. It was heavier than it should have been. All records of women's work were. They carried hours, burns, hunger, debts, and signatures made by men who never touched the fire. The clerk placed it beside the bridal vow book. Lucan said, read the entry for the black gold flame necklace delivered to royal fever chambers. The clerk opened to the Vale section. Maerith's breath caught at the phrase. Royal fever chambers, not bridal treasury, not crown ornament. Lucan heard it too. His face changed by a fraction. The clerk read, crafted by Maerith Vale, Ember, core vessel, delivered under urgent royal fever service. Flame status. He stopped. Lucan's voice turned colder. Continue. The clerk swallowed. Flame status recorded as spent. Isolde's eyes sharpened. Maerith stood very still. Lucan looked at her hands again. The clerk's finger moved lower on the page. Donor release line. The hall waited. The reliquary pulsed once, dim and alive. The clerk looked up, suddenly pale. The donor release and compensation line has been erased. The erased line did not yet name the hand that removed it. It proved only that the cost of Maerith's flame had once belonged in the record, and someone had made the record survive without it. The erased line did not clear Maerith. It only proved someone had needed the cost to disappear. Isolde Harrow saw that before the court could turn fully against her. An erased compensation line may prove workshop fraud, Majesty, she said, one hand still resting over the burn at her throat. It does not prove the bride wore stolen life knowingly. The room steadied around her. Maerith heard it happen. Isolde had given them a safer story, not a bride taking what was never released, but an artisan hiding debt inside royal craft and waiting for a wedding to make it useful. Lucan Dray stood beside the reliquary where the necklace pulsed behind black glass. Its fire pressed faintly toward Maerith, not choosing, not pleading, only answering source heat through containment. Open custody, Lucan said. The clerk looked up. For the Maker Ledger, Majesty? For every hand that carried it. Still, no apology. Still no release. Still no order removing Maerith from suspicion. He opened records the way kings opened gates during siege. Because danger had reached the wall, not because the people outside deserved trust. Maerith looked at him. You are reading my labor record because you did not read my hands when they went empty. A muscle moved in Lucan's jaw. Isolde lowered her eyes with perfect sorrow. Mistress Vale, no one wished to shame your labor. No, Maerith said, only to own it. The first custody slip was read beneath the ash altar. Origin, Vale Workshop. Object named Black Gold Flame Necklace. Delivery condition, Emergency Fever Vessel. Recipient, Royal Fever Chamber. The court murmured again, Emergency Fever Vessel. Not bridal ornament. Not dowry jewel. Lucan's face remained still, but the shadows beneath his collar darkened. Maerith saw his dragon fever remember before he did. The slight tightening of his breath, the way his hand almost rose to the place where the necklace had rested for 3 months. Almost. Then he forced it down. Continue, he said. The clerk turned the strip. Second custody, Royal Fever Chamber, object held under healer guard. King Lucan Dray, unfit to countersign. Fever state recorded as ash delirium. Object placed at throat under physician order. The words struck the court with quiet force. Unfit to countersign. Maerith watched Lucan absorb them. He had not purchased consent because he had not been awake enough to ask for it. He had survived by a consent no one had asked for and a cost no one had paid. The fire priest spoke carefully. A fever patient may carry living flame for preservation. That does not make him owner of donor source. Isolde answered smoothly. But the crown may later purchase the vessel from the workshop. Maerith turned to her. Living flame cannot become bridal property because a ledger forgot the woman it burned out of. Isolde's expression did not break. If the woman concealed the donor debt, perhaps the crown was the one deceived. There, again, The room took the path she offered because it spared the throne, the bride, and everyone who had admired the necklace without wondering why Maerith no longer warmed her own hands. Lucan's voice cut through the murmur. "Read the next custody." The clerk swallowed. Third custody, released from royal fever chamber to crown inventory after fever stabilization. Lucan went still. Maerith remembered that morning. He had woken with no fever in his eyes and asked why she was sitting on the floor beside the bed. She had told him the necklace held. He had touched the flame stone against his throat and said quietly, half dazed, "Then stay until it does not need you." She had stayed. The court had called that attachment too. The clerk continued. Crown inventory classification, fully transferable ornament. Maerith closed her eyes for one breath. There it was. The lie made neat enough to travel. Lucan looked at the ledger. Who classified it? Crown Purchase Office. Isolde said, "A lawful office." Maerith opened her eyes. Lawful ink can still bury a living thing. The fire priest nodded once, unwilling but bound by statute. A vessel containing living flame cannot be made fully transferable unless donor release is attached. Lucan's gaze moved to the erased line. No release. No compensation. No consent. He looked at Maerith then, and for the first time she saw the shape of his understanding sharpen into something that hurt him. Not enough. Pain was not repair. Open the fever chamber receipt, he ordered. A second clerk hurried from the side archive. The receipt was smaller, sealed in healer wax, and heat-stained along one edge. The priest read it aloud. Dragon fever severity, terminal rise, royal flame rejecting body, external living flame applied to stabilize pulse. Vessel remained at throat through 3 fever nights. Maker present for heat feeding. The court noise thinned. Maker present. Heat feeding. Maerith felt every eye find her hands again. Bought it. Cool. Used. Lucan's voice was low. Heat feeding means? The priest did not want to answer. Maerith did it for him. It means the flame inside the vessel was dying because it was keeping you alive, she said. So I fed it from what I had left. Lucan looked as if someone had struck him without touching him. Isolde moved quickly. Or she bound herself deeper to ensure future claim. Maerith laughed once softly. It made several ladies flinch. You think I emptied my hands for leverage? I think, Isolde said, gentle and poisonous, that desperate women call many things sacrifice after the throne belongs elsewhere. Lucan turned toward her. Not tender, not safe, but colder than before. Bring the bridal treasury transfer order. For the first time, Isolde's fingers tightened against her gown. Only Maerith saw it. The order arrived folded in white silk, sealed for the rite that had already failed. The clerk broke the wax and read until his voice faltered. Lucan stepped closer. Read it. The clerk looked from Isolde to Maerith, then down again. Transfer of black gold flame necklace from crown inventory to bridal treasury approved for ceremonial use. He stopped. The reliquary pulsed once behind glass. Lucan's voice lowered. Approved by whom? The clerk turned the page toward the court. At the bottom, pressed deep into the wax beside the crown mark, was the blackthorn seal of House Harrow. The seal did not yet name Isolde's hand. It named the house that had accepted a fever vessel as bridal property. House Harrow's seal did not prove the bride had known what burned inside the stone. It proved the transfer had passed through her side of the wedding before Maerith's cost was named. Isolde Harrow used that space like a woman trained to survive courts. My house accepted what the crown inventory offered, she said, voice steady, though the burn at her throat had begun to blister beneath the healer's ash. A bride's house does not audit fever records. We were given a royal ornament for ceremonial use. The noble rose settled again. Not fully, but enough. Maerith watched the room choose caution over truth because caution wore better clothes. Lucan Dray stood with the bridal transfer order in one hand. The black thorn seal stared up from the wax beside the crown mark. Neither confession nor innocence. Open bridal treasury custody, he said. Isolde's lashes lowered. Majesty, surely the treasury custody concerns ceremonial handling, not living flame law. The object burned you during ceremony, Lucan said. Ceremonial handling is now part of living flame law. No apology. No softness. Only another door forced open after it had already struck Maerith in the face. A treasury clerk came forward from behind the bridal screen, carrying white ledger sheets bound by gold thread. The sheets should have recorded gowns, vow cups, crown rings, incense bowls, and flame jewels. Harmless bridal things. Maerith looked at the black glass reliquary. The necklace pulsed once inside it, dim and contained. Not calling her, not choosing, only still alive where the court wanted it to behave like property. The clerk read, Request from House Harrow Steward to Vale Bridal Treasury. 1 royal flame jewel, suitable for throat display, visible throne legitimacy, and continuity with the king's recovered health. The court went quiet in a different way. Lucan's fingers tightened on the transfer order. Maerith looked at Isolde. Visible throne legitimacy. Isolde met her eyes. A dragon bride must show alliance with the throne. That is not a crime. No, Maerith said. But you did not ask for a jewel. You asked for proof he lived. Isolde's mouth curved faintly, wounded and reasonable. Every bride wears proof of union. Do not make tradition sound sinister because your workshop mishandled disclosure. Maerith looked toward the reliquary. My hands did not mishandle the truth. They emptied carrying it. Lucan's gaze moved to her bare fingers. There was pain in him now. She did not trust it. Pain in powerful men often arrived after the damage and expected to be treated like payment. Continue, Lucan ordered. The clerk's voice thinned. Crown inventory response. Black gold flame necklace available. Classification. Fully transferable ornament. Previous royal use. Fever ward complete. No active restriction attached. The fire priest stiffened. Maerith did not move. She had learned that stillness could be a kind of armor when every expression might be used against her. Lucan turned to the priest. A ceremonial transfer of a former fever vessel requires what? The priest drew a breath. If the vessel has ever carried living flame, donor release verification must be checked before transfer. Even if inventory classification says ornamental, Isolde immediately said, then the failure belongs to Crown inventory. There it was. Clean. Reasonable. Useful. If Crown officers marked it transferable, House Harrow had no cause to doubt it, she continued. The bride did not write the classification. The bride did not erase the release line. The bride did not know an artisan had hidden an unpaid claim in a royal jewel. Maerith's throat tightened around the words unpaid claim. Lucan heard it. His eyes darkened. Maerith spoke before he could make her pain into his evidence. Do not call my last flame a claim. Isolde's face softened. Then what should the court call it, Mistress Vale, when it appears around a king's throat and answers you during his wedding? Maerith stepped closer to the altar. The warden shifted, as if her empty hands could still set the room on fire. Lucan saw them move. He did not stop them. Not yet. That failure landed. Maerith looked at him. You see? Even now, they guard the court from what is missing in me. A muscle worked in his jaw. Stand down, he ordered the wardens. He had stopped the room from treating her like a weapon, but not from treating her like a risk. The warden stepped back. Isolde watched, calculating the shift. Lucan turned to the clerk. Bring the release verification page. The clerk hesitated. Majesty, if it was erased from the maker ledger, bring the verification page. The treasury drawer was opened. A smaller page emerged, folded into the custody ledger. Its edges were clean, newer than the fever receipt, newer than the workshop entry. Maerith saw that before the clerk spoke. Lucan saw her seeing it. That old intimacy again. The brutal kind. He had learned too late how much her silence noticed. The clerk read, Donor release verification attached by inventory reference. The priest frowned. Attached where? The clerk turned the page over. Blank. A thin scrape crossed the bottom where a seal had been lifted. The attachment is missing, the clerk whispered. Isolde's answer came quickly. Then someone in Crown inventory mishandled it. House Harrow cannot be blamed for receiving what the Crown certified. Maerith looked at her. You did not need to know my name to use what kept him alive. Isolde's eyes cooled. And you did not need to hide inside it to remain near him. Lucan's voice dropped. Enough. But enough did not repair erased ink. Enough did not return flame. Enough did not change that he had worn the proof against his throat and still needed clerks to tell him he had never owned it. The fire inside the reliquary flickered low. Maerith felt it in her chest like a distant pulse weakening. The priest turned sharply. Majesty, if the living flame remains contained too long under dispute, it may collapse inward. Lucan looked at Maerith. She looked back without rescue in her face. Do not ask me to touch it while I am still treated as the danger inside the room. Lucan's hand closed around the ledger page. Read the Harrow request note in full, he said. The clerk's eyes dropped to a smaller line beneath the steward's formal script. His face drained of color. Isolde's fingers tightened. The clerk read, barely above a whisper, Select the vessel that still carries the king's pulse. The note did not name Isolde's hand. It named the hunger behind the bridal request. Not beauty, not tradition, but a jewel that could make the court see the king's survival as part of House Harrow's claim. Inside the black glass, the living flame flickered lower. Maerith felt the failing pulse answer the hollow place in her chest. The line did not prove the bride knew the flame was Maerith's. It proved House Harrow wanted the king's survival worn as bridal proof. Isolde Harrow knew how to live inside that difference. King's pulse is ceremonial language, she said, one hand at her burned throat. Her voice calm enough to rescue half the room from discomfort. Every royal bride asks to wear symbols of continuity. My steward requested proof of royal recovery, not stolen life. The court wanted to believe her, believing Isolde made the wound procedural, believing Maerith made the court complicit. Inside the black glass reliquary, the flame flickered again, lower, then lower. The fire priest stepped toward it so quickly his copper prayer chains struck one another. Majesty. Lucan Dray did not look away from the reliquary. Speak. If the living flame collapses inward, the vessel may burn out completely. Isolde's eyes sharpened. Then contain it better. The priest shook his head. Containment is part of the harm now. Living flame recognizes source heat. Without donor stabilization, it will consume what remains of itself. Every eye turned to Maerith. She did not move. No ember lit beneath her skin. No hidden power rose to make the court gasp. There was only a woman with empty hands being asked again to save what others had used against her. Lucan looked at her. Can you stabilize it? Maerith met his eyes. You want my hands only when something is dying. A silence opened between them. He took the words without defense, but taking pain was not the same as repairing it. The priest whispered, Mistress Vale, if you are the donor source. If? She asked. He lowered his eyes. Good. Let the words shame him. Isolde stepped forward. Majesty, if Maerith alone can touch the flame, does that not prove she placed herself in control of your life? A king's pulse should not answer a private artisan. Maerith looked at her. A king's pulse should not have needed a private artisan because his court was too proud to name fever. The court flinched. Lucan's jaw tightened, not at Maerith, at the truth. The flame inside the reliquary gave a thin, broken pulse. Maerith felt it beneath her ribs, a little echo where warmth used to live. She hated that she still felt it. She hated that some part of what had saved him was dying inside a box while people argued over who had the right to touch the remains of her sacrifice. Lucan turned to the court. Maerith Vale is granted donor authority over the living flame vessel, he said. The words moved through the hall like fire through silk. Isolde's expression cooled. Donor authority during a royal bridal dispute gives her access to the object at the center of accusation. Lucan looked at her. Donor access is not suspect access. The court heard how late he had learned the difference. Maerith heard it too. She did not thank him. She stepped toward the reliquary. Record that I am touching it to keep the evidence alive, not to accept blame for what was done to it. Recorded, Lucan said. The word angered her. Records had become obedient only after her body had paid. The priest opened the black glass lid. Heat did not rise. Cold did. A dying living flame did not feel like fire. It felt like the moment after a hearth goes out and everyone in the room remembers too late that winter is waiting. Maerith held her hand above the flamestone. It answered weakly, not with love. Not with choice, with recognition of source. Her fingers trembled once. Lucan saw. He took one step forward, then stopped before the movement became comfort he had no right to offer. Do not, Maerith said without looking at him. He stopped fully. Good. She lowered 2 fingers to the flamestone. Pain opened through her palm. No blood, no wound anyone else could see. Only heat leaving a place that had already been emptied once. The reliquary filled with white gold light. The court drew back. Maerith did not. The flames steadied, and she felt another small warmth leave her forever. Lucan's face changed. This time, not with surprise. With understanding he could not bear. You are feeding it again, he said. Maerith's voice came thin but steady. No, I am keeping alive the proof you gave away, Isolde said softly, or strengthening the bind she created. Maerith turned her head. The effort cost her. If I wanted to bind him, bride heiress, I would not have let him stand beside you while wearing my last flame. The line struck the bridal court cleanly. Even Isolde had no answer fast enough. The flamestone pulsed harder beneath Maerith's fingers. White gold light spread through the reliquary, then up the altar pillars, then across the ceiling where dragon shadows had been carved in black stone for 6 generations. The priest backed away. Majesty, it is not only stabilizing. Lucan's eyes lifted. The light bent into shape. Not a prophecy. Not judgment. Memory. A fever chamber formed in the air above the altar. Smoke, dark curtains, healer bowls gone black. Lucan's body arched beneath dragon fever. His shadow on the wall no longer shaped like a man, but like a dragon trying to claw itself free. Then Maerith appeared in the memory, younger by only 3 months and already exhausted, kneeling beside his bed with the black gold necklace between both hands. Her palms were burning. Lucan stared at the vision as if the court had vanished. In the memory, his dragon shadow struck. It tore across the room and slammed into Maerith hard enough to throw her against the fever chamber floor. The real court gasped. Memory Maerith dragged herself back to the bed anyway, pressed the flamestone to Lucan's throat, and whispered through burned breath, "Take mine before yours kills you." The vision flared white. And the Dragon King saw the night her last flame entered the necklace, while his own shadow nearly killed her. The memory did not ask the court to pity Maerith. It showed them what pity had arrived too late to stop. Above the ash altar, the fevered chamber burned in white gold light. Smoke-black curtains, healer bowls cracked with failed ember water. Dragon King Lucan Dray thrashing beneath a fever that had turned his shadow against him, and Maerith Vale on the floor, thrown there by the shape of the dragon inside him. No one in the bridal court breathed loudly. Even House Harrow stood still, one hand at her burned throat, her eyes narrowed not with horror but with calculation. The memory had wounded her argument, but it had not killed it. Not yet. In the vision, Maerith dragged herself back to Lucan's bedside. Her palms glowed with the last of her living flame. Not bright, not triumphant. A thin, desperate gold that made her hands look almost transparent. A healer in the memory whispered, "Mistress Vale, if you feed the vessel again, your source may not recover." Memory Maerith did not look away from Lucan. If his fever breaks, the kingdom lives. And you? Memory Maerith's smile was small and terrible. Do not ask women what is left of them after men survive. The bridal court flinched. Lucan looked as if the line had struck bone. Maerith, the real one, pulled her fingers from the flamestone. The reliquary light remained, holding the memory open without her touch now. Her hand trembled once before she hid it inside her sleeve. Lucan saw. He did not reach. Good. Learning restraint was the first small mercy he had offered without taking credit for it. The memory continued. The black gold necklace lay open across Lucan's throat. Its ember core flickered weakly as Maerith bent over it and breathed into the stone. Light poured from her mouth, her palms, the hollow below her ribs. The flame did not leap like power. It left like life leaving a room. Lucan's dragon shadow struck again. This time it caught Maerith by the shoulder and drove her against the bedpost. The court heard the impact. Not bloody, not graphic. Worse, because it was familiar. A woman being harmed while saving the man everyone would later call strong. The fire priest beside the altar whispered, "Source transfer." Lucan's voice was rough. "Say the law." The priest looked afraid of the answer. A final source transfer is only performed when the donor flame is expected to be spent. It is not craft labor. It is not ornament work. It is living preservation. Isolde spoke before silence could turn against her, or an unauthorized binding performed in a sick room without royal witness. Several nobles seized the words with their faces before they dared speak them. Maerith almost admired her. Almost. Isolde knew how to turn sacrifice into threat, while sounding like she cared for the crown. "A fever memory is not a contract," Isolde continued. "It shows emotion, pain, perhaps even devotion. It does not show lawful consent from the throne. If anything, it proves Mistress Vale placed herself inside the king's survival when he was too ill to refuse." Lucan turned toward her, not with softness, with something colder. "I was too ill to consent to ownership," he said. "Not too ill to be saved." Isolde lowered her eyes. "And saved men can still be endangered by those who save them for claim." Maerith laughed quietly. The sound hurt her throat. "You keep looking for ambition because you cannot imagine giving without purchase." Isolde's expression did not break. "I imagine consequence. A queen must. You are not queen." The bridal court went still. Lucan did not correct Maerith. That silence mattered. Isolde heard it too. The memory brightened. In the fever chamber, Maerith pressed both hands around the flame stone. The necklace absorbed her living flame in a slow white ring. Lucan's body stopped convulsing. His dragon shadow folded back into him. one claw at a time. Then his eyes opened in the vision. Not fully conscious, barely alive. He whispered, Maerith? The real Lucan closed his eyes. Maerith did not. She watched the memory because she had lived it once alone. She would not look away now that the court finally had to see it. Memory Maerith leaned close to him. Sleep, Majesty. His fevered hand caught her wrist. Stay until it does not need you. The words moved through the court like smoke under a door. Lucan opened his eyes again, real and stricken. Maerith looked at him. You remembered enough to ask me to stay, not enough to ask what staying cost. No one spoke. The fire priest bowed his head. The living flame in the vessel is hers. Isolde's mouth tightened. The priest continued carefully. That does not determine bride, right, affection, or romantic claim. It determines source, donor heat, body debt, unreleased living flame. Maerith appreciated the precision. It saved her from becoming another symbol men could fight over. Lucan faced the court. The bridal rite is suspended. A ripple of shock passed through Vale. Isolde lifted her chin. Majesty? Suspended, he repeated. Not because the necklace chose another bride. It did not. Because the crown attempted to transfer a life-bound fever vessel as bridal property without donor release. A public action. Not forgiveness. Not repair enough. But action. Maerith felt the flame inside the reliquary pulse weakly, steadier now, but not restored. She felt the answering emptiness under her ribs deepen. The priest noticed her face. Mistress Vale? She straightened before he could step closer. Lucan saw the movement. What is happening to her? The priest hesitated too long. Maerith answered instead. What should have been recorded? Her voice remained calm. That seemed to frighten Lucan more than pain would have. The priest finally spoke. A donor who has spent her final living flame cannot repeatedly stabilize the vessel without further loss. The flame is evidence now, Majesty, but keeping it alive may continue to draw from the source body. Lucan turned toward Maerith. Horror reached his face too late to help. She looked at him across the failed bridal altar, the contained necklace, the suspended wedding, and the court that had needed magic to believe what her hands had already shown. No, she said before he could speak. He stopped. I will not keep saving the proof of what you gave away while standing here as your temporary anything. The reliquary flickered. Maerith stepped back from it. The flame bent after her as far as glass allowed, not choosing, not begging, only following the body it had not finished costing. Lucan's voice came low. Maerith. She looked at him once. You wore my last flame as medicine, she said, then offered it as ornament. Do not ask my hollow hands to make that easier for you to examine. Then she turned from the altar. Behind her, the flame inside the black glass dimmed so suddenly the fire priest gasped, and the fever shadow beneath Lucan's collar began to darken again. Maerith did not run from the bridal court. Running would have pleased them. It would have let the nobles say guilt had legs, that a woman with nothing left in her hands still knew how to flee when truth became dangerous. So she walked, past the ash altar, past the bridal flowers curling brown at their edges, past the black glass reliquary where the flame she had spent her life into flickered lower with every step she took away from it. The court parted for her, not out of respect, out of fear they had not yet learned to be ashamed of. Behind her, the fire priest said, Majesty, if she leaves source range, the vessel may fail. Isolde Harrow seized the words with quiet precision. Then she cannot leave. Maerith stopped. Only then. Lucan Dray turned toward Isolde slowly. The fever shadow beneath his collar had darkened into branching lines, like black lightning trapped under skin. Isolde's voice stayed soft. I say this for the king's safety. If Maerith's body controls the flame that holds back his fever, then donor access is no longer a private wound. It is a royal security matter. A few lords nodded before they understood what they were agreeing to. There it was again. Concern shaped into a cage. Maerith looked over her shoulder. You have tried curse, fraud, hidden claim, and now security. How many names does a woman's sacrifice need before you stop calling it a threat? Isolde lowered her eyes. How many times must the crown be endangered before we stop calling obsession sacrifice? The room breathed in sharply. Lucan's dragon shadow moved behind him. Not fully free. Not yet. But the banners above the altars stirred as if something enormous had inhaled. Maerith watched him fight it back with clenched hands and royal stillness. Once, she would have crossed the room before anyone asked. Once, she would have pressed her palm to his chest and given what little warmth remained because love had taught her to move faster than self-preservation. She did not move now. That was the consequence. Lucan saw it. His voice came rough. No one detains her. Isolde turned. Majesty, no one touches Maerith Vale. The wardens froze. The court heard the order. So did Maerith. It was the first protection he had given before she paid for it. Still late. Still not enough. She faced him fully. Do not make freedom sound generous after you let them debate whether my body belongs to your survival. Lucan took the blow in silence. Good. Silence was the only honest answer he had earned. The priest stepped closer to the reliquary. The living flame is collapsing. We need a stabilizing contact. No, Maerith said. The word landed harder than if she had shouted. Lucan looked at her. I will not order you. That is not the same as understanding why you cannot ask. His throat moved. The fever shadow darkened another inch. Isolde saw it. Mistress Vale, if you let the king weaken to prove a point, the court will remember. Maerith smiled then, and it was the saddest thing in the room. The court remembers what it is told to survive. She looked at the reliquary, at the little failing light inside it. Her last flame, not returned, not free, contained as evidence because people had finally found a use for her pain. If that flame dies, the priest said carefully, the fever ward around his majesty may break. Maerith's voice softened, but not with surrender. Then perhaps the king should learn what happens when he gives away the thing keeping him alive. Lucan closed his eyes once. When he opened them, his gaze had changed. Not forgiven, not healed, but stripped. Escort Mistress Vale only if she requests it, he ordered. She leaves under her own authority. Isolde's mouth tightened. And the bridal rite? Lucan looked at the burned necklace behind glass. There is no bridal rite while a donor's flame is dying in a box. That cost him. The court felt it. House Harrow felt it. Isolde felt the political foundation shift beneath her perfect shoes. Maerith almost hated that the words reached her. Almost. Then the reliquary cracked. A thin sound. Clean. Terrible. The priest lunged toward it, then stopped, because the glass had begun to frost white from the inside. Source rejection, he whispered. Isolde took a small step back. What does that mean? The priest looked at Maerith, then at Lucan. The flame is refusing containment without donor protection. Lucan's fever shadow rose higher along his throat. A dark scale pattern appeared beneath his jaw. The court recoiled. Maerith felt the old instinct tear through her. Go to him. Save him. Lose more. She pressed her empty hands into her sleeves until her nails bit skin. Lucan saw the struggle and did not use it. That was new. Painfully new. Maerith, he said, voice low and breaking only at the edge. Leave, if you choose. The hall went silent. He was letting her walk away while the thing she had spent herself to prevent began taking him back. Maerith looked at him for a long moment. I loved you before I learned how expensive survival could be, she said. Then she turned and walked toward the outer doors. Behind her, Isolde spoke sharply. If she leaves now, Majesty, she proves the flame was always leverage. Maerith did not stop. Lucan answered for himself this time. No, he said. If she leaves now, she proves I taught her that saving me was never enough to make this court see her. The outer doors opened to a corridor of cold emberlight. Maerith stepped across the threshold. At that exact moment, the reliquary split down the center, and Lucan's dragon shadow rose behind him, wearing the shape of the fever that Maerith was no longer willing to feed. The dragon shadow rose behind Lucan, and for the first time in 3 months, he did not use Maerith's name like a cure. The bridal court broke apart in fear. Court ladies stumbled back against the pillars. Ember priests lifted warding chains. A lord fell to one knee, not in reverence, but because his body understood before his pride did that the king's fever had never truly died. It had only been held away by something they had just watched. Maerith refused to feed. At the threshold, Maerith heard the first roar. She stopped in the corridor, not because she had forgiven him, because her body remembered the sound of him dying. Inside the court, Isolde Harrow recovered first. Bring her back. The command was soft. That made it worse. Majesty cannot survive a full shadow rise, she said. If Mistress Vale's body is source, then her absence is active harm. 2 wardens turned toward the open doors. Lucan's shadow struck the floor behind him, claws of black flame spreading across white stone. His voice came through clenched teeth. No one follows her. One warden froze. The other hesitated. Lucan turned his fever-dark eyes on them. Did I speak unclearly? They stepped back. Isolde's face tightened. You would risk the throne to spare her pride? Lucan laughed once, and the sound was almost a growl. No. I risked her life to spare mine. That is the point I was late to understand. The court went still. Maerith heard it from the corridor. She hated that she did. The reliquary split wider on the altar. The black glass opened like a cracked egg, and the flame stone trembled inside, dim, white gold, alive only by stubbornness and cost. The fire priest whispered, Majesty, if the donor does not stabilize it, she will not be ordered, Lucan said. The priest swallowed. Then the flame may fail. Then record that it failed because the crown made a woman's living source into property, contained it as evidence, and ask her to pay again. The recorder's stylus hesitated. Lucan looked at him. Write it. The stylus moved. That was the first repair that did not ask Maerith to hurt. Not enough, but different. Isolde stepped closer, her bridal gown dragging through spilled ember wine. This is dangerous sentiment. A king cannot rewrite law while fevered. Lucan's dragon shadow rose higher, curling along the wall behind him. Then perhaps a fevered king is still more honest than a bride who calls a woman's last flame ceremony. King's pulse was ceremonial language. No, Lucan said. It was appetite dressed in ceremony. A ripple struck the court. Isolde's eyes flashed. My house requested a royal symbol from royal inventory. If inventory lied, then punish inventory. Do not humiliate the bride chosen to stabilize your throne. At the corridor threshold, Maerith's hands closed inside her sleeves. Stabilize. How easily they used that word for women. Lucan heard it too. His face hardened. This wedding is suspended from all legitimacy claims until donor release, ledger custody, and Harrow transfer requests are reviewed under public witness. Isolde went pale. You would shame House Harrow before the southern courts? I shamed Maerith Vale before my own. No apology. Not yet. Only fact, the kind that could not be made pretty. The fever shadow struck again, and Lucan staggered. One hand hit the altar, Black scale darkened under his collar, climbing toward his jaw. The court cried out. Maerith took one step back into the hall before she stopped herself. The instinct to save him was still alive. So was the memory of being handed away. Lucan saw her in the doorway. For one breath, the room narrowed to the space between them. "Do not come closer for me," he said. Her throat tightened. Isolde turned sharply. "If she does not come closer, he dies." Maerith looked at her. "You have confused consequence with murder." Isolde's smile was thin. "And you have confused abandonment with dignity." Maerith stepped just inside the court, but not toward the altar, toward the record table. Every face followed. Lucan did not move. His shadow strained behind him, but he held himself still as if motion toward her would be another theft. Maerith looked at the recorder. "Write this, too. I am not refusing to save evidence. I am refusing to be used as medicine while still unnamed as donor." Lucan's voice came low. "Record her words." The recorder wrote. The fire priest stared at the cracked reliquary. "There may be another way to slow collapse. Not stabilize, slow." Lucan turned. "Say it." "Public source recognition. The flame may hold if court law stops treating the donor as a suspect body." Isolde's answer came instantly. "That is ritual coercion. She will use this crisis to force recognition." Maerith looked at Lucan. "Do you hear how many times she can call my existence a strategy before you call it cruelty?" Lucan closed his eyes once. When he opened them, he faced the court. "Maerith Vale is recognized as living flame donor to the fever vessel that preserved my life. She is not suspect for source recognition. She is not crown property. She is not required to stabilize what the crown misused." The flame stone pulsed. Weak, but steadier. The fever shadow behind Lucan recoiled a fraction. The court saw it. So did Isolde. For the first time, her calm cracked. Lucan gripped the altar, breathing hard. "Open House Harrow steward testimony." Isolde turned. "No." The word came too fast. Too naked. Lucan looked at her. "No?" She recovered, but not perfectly. "My steward is not present to defend house procedure." Maerith's eyes moved to the bridal screen. A small shadow shifted behind it. Not a noble. Not a priest. A man in Harrow, black, half hidden beside the treasury drawers, holding a torn strip of donor verification in his gloved hand. The flame stone flared once toward him. Not judgment. Recognition of the missing release line. And every eye in the court turned. The man behind the bridal screen did not look like a villain. That made the court believe him possible. He was thin, silver-haired, dressed in House Harrow black, with a steward's chain at his throat. One gloved hand held a torn strip of parchment. The other hovered near the treasury drawer as if he still thought hiding the evidence was an option after every eye in Vale had turned toward him. Isolde Harrow recovered first. "Master Orwin," she said, voice calm but sharp beneath the calm. "Come forward." The steward did not move. The flamestone inside the cracked reliquary pulsed toward the parchment in his hand. Not toward his heart, not toward guilt. Toward missing ink that belonged to the living flame record. Lucan Dray's fever shadow strained against the altar wall behind him. "Bring him," he ordered. Two wardens stepped toward the bridal screen. Maerith spoke before they touched the steward. "No." The court turned. Lucan looked at her. "No. If he is dragged, House Harrow will call it coercion before he reaches the altar." Isolde's mouth tightened. Maerith looked at the steward. "Walk, Master Orwin. Let the court see whether your courage is as clean as your gloves." A faint tremor moved through the man. Then he walked. The torn strip shook in his hand as he reached the record table. The fire priest extended a copper tray. "Place it there," the priest said. Orwin obeyed. The strip did not burst into flame. It did not sing truth. It only lay there, small and damaged, with half a seal scraped from one edge. The clerk bent over it. His voice changed. Donor verification attachment. Partial. Isolde stepped forward. A partial strip proves nothing but mishandling. Maerith's eyes stayed on the parchment. Then, read the part. Someone mishandled poorly. The clerk swallowed. Donor source. Maerith Vale. The court did not gasp this time. They had used up shock. Now came consequence. The clerk continued. Release status. He stopped. Lucan's voice was low. Read it. Release status. Not obtained. The words entered the court like a door closing. Maerith felt them pass through her without warmth. Not obtained. Such a small phrase for what her body had lost. Isolde lifted her chin. If Crown Inventory separated the attachment, House Harrow cannot be blamed for trusting the classification. Orwin flinched. Maerith saw it. So did Lucan. Ask your steward, Maerith said. Isolde's eyes sharpened. My steward handled ceremonial receipt. He did not classify the crown's property. Maerith turned fully to her. Living flame was never crown property. Lucan's voice followed, colder. Answer her. Orwin's face had gone gray. House Harrow received the crown classification. Isolde exhaled almost triumphantly. Then Orwin whispered, and requested the verification attachment be removed from the bridal packet. Silence split the court. Isolde did not look at him. That was her first mistake. Lucan stepped closer. The dragon shadow behind him rose, but he held it still. On whose authority? Orwin's mouth opened. Isolde cut in. Majesty, steward language can be misunderstood. Bridal packets are simplified for ceremony. No bride reads donor law before vows. Maerith looked at her burned throat. No, you only wore the cost. Isolde's eyes flashed. And you wore the king's weakness as intimacy. Lucan turned on her so fast, several nobles stepped back. Maerith raised one hand. Not to stop him for Isolde. To stop him from making her justice look like his anger. I will answer, she said. Lucan stopped. That mattered. She faced Isolde. I wore nothing. I gave. There is a difference, though I understand why it confuses women who only know how to acquire. The court felt the blow. Isolde's face hardened. The reliquary cracked wider. The flamestone dimmed again. Suddenly, dangerously. The priest moved toward it. Donor recognition is holding it, but not enough, he warned. The vessel needs source contact before the flame collapses. Lucan looked at Maerith. This time he did not ask with his mouth. That was better. Still not enough. The priest said, Mistress Vale, if you accept the vessel back. No. The words struck the court harder than the cracking glass. Lucan's eyes lifted to hers. Maerith stepped toward the altar, stopping just beyond the reach of the reliquary's glow. I will not take it back as if this is a misplaced necklace returned to its maker, she said. I will not let the court turn my last flame into a sentimental object passing from bride to donor while everyone keeps their dignity but me. Lucan's face went still. She looked at him. If you want me to touch it, name what you gave away. The bridal court held its breath. Isolde whispered, Majesty, do not let her force a humiliation. Maerith did not look away from Lucan. No, let him force a truth. The fever shadow behind Lucan trembled, black scales climbing his throat. His pride was there too. His crown, his wedding alliance, his court. Every structure that had made it easier to call her artisan than savior. Then he stepped away from the altar and faced the full court. I gave bride heiress Isolde Harrow a necklace I had no right to transfer, he said. Maerith did not move. Lucan continued, voice rougher but clear. It was not a bridal ornament. It was Maerith Vale's living flame vessel. It preserved my life during dragon fever. I wore her last flame as medicine without asking what it cost her. The court heard every word. Maerith heard the one thing missing. Lucan did too. He turned back to her. And then I offered it as ornament. Something in Maerith's chest broke. Not softly, not romantically, like ice splitting over deep water. She stepped to the reliquary. Record that, she said. The recorder wrote with shaking fingers. Only then did Maerith place her palm over the cracked glass. The flamestone answered her with a weak white gold pulse. Heat passed up through her skin, but it did not return what had been spent. It only recognized the body still owed. The court watched. Lucan watched as if every second cut him. The flame steadied. Then it opened. Not toward Maerith, toward Isolde Harrow. A second memory formed in the air. The bridal treasury, the Harrow steward, and Isolde's voice behind a white screen. I do not need the artisan's name, the memory, Isolde said. I need the vessel that proves the king lived, because my house now holds what kept him alive. For one moment, no one in Ember Vale moved. The memory hung above the ash altar, white gold and merciless, not because it judged the court, but because living flame remembered heat, voice, and the hands that had handled its source record. Isolde Harrow stood beneath her own voice. I do not need the artisan's name, the memory, Isolde said again. I need the vessel that proves the king lived because my house now holds what kept him alive. The image flickered. A bridal treasury chamber formed around her. Master Orwin stood beside the drawer, holding the donor verification strip before it was torn. Isolde's gloved hand pointed not to the jewel sketch, but to the line marked donor release not obtained. Remove that, she said in the memory. Ceremony requires clarity, not workshop complication. The court did not gasp. It had gone beyond surprise. This was the quieter sound of people realizing they had helped cruelty look lawful. Isolde recovered with terrible discipline. A flame memory is not sworn testimony. It reflects heat impressions, not intent. Maerith Vale looked at her. You are right. It does not show intent. Your steward can supply that. Every eye turned to Orwin. The old steward looked as if years had fallen onto his shoulders all at once. Isolde's voice sharpened. Master Orwin, remember your house. He did. That was why he trembled. I removed the verification attachment, he said, by bridal instruction. Isolde's face hardened. By ceremonial simplification? Orwin shook his head. No, my lady, by your instruction. You said House Harrow must not appear to receive a second-hand fever object. You wanted the king's survival worn as if it had become bridal-proof. The words struck the court exactly where Maerith had been wounded. Her gift had not merely been stolen. It had been translated into another woman's claim. Lucan Dray turned toward Isolde. His fever shadow still moved behind him, weakened now by Maerith's brief contact with the flame, but not gone. He looked less like an untouchable king and more like a man standing inside the cost of having been saved. You knew there was a donor, he said. Isolde lifted her chin. I knew there was an artisan complication. You knew the release was not obtained. I knew the crown inventory had already called it transferable. Maerith spoke before Lucan could, and you made sure no one asked why. Isolde looked at her at last without the bridal softness. Do you know what a crown wedding is, Mistress Vale? It is not a love poem. It is survival. My house needed proof that the Dragon King's recovery belonged to the Alliance. My flame did not belong to your alliance. No, Isolde said. But he did. Lucan's expression changed. Not with rage, with the final death of an excuse. No, he said. I belong to the survival she gave me. and I made that survival available for others to decorate. The court heard it. Maerith heard it. It did not heal her, but truth had finally stopped asking permission. Lucan faced the full Vale bridal court. The wedding rite is dissolved. House Harrow's bridal claim is suspended pending tribunal for removal of donor verification, concealment of living flame status, and unlawful ceremonial transfer. Isolde went pale. You would break the Southern Alliance for an artisan? Lucan's voice lowered. I broke a woman first by letting the court call her only that. The words moved through the hall like heat through metal. He turned to the record table. Correct the maker ledger. The clerk's hand shook over the page. Lucan dictated clearly. Maerith Vale, living, flame donor, royal fever preservation, final source transfer performed under emergency healing condition, donor release for transfer not obtained, compensation unpaid, crown ownership invalid. The stylus scratched. Each word returned something. Not flame, never that easily, but name, truth, debt, witness. The fire priest bowed over the living flame statutes. By Vale law, the vessel remains bound to donor authority. It cannot be sold, worn, inherited, gifted, or used in rite without donor release. Lucan looked at Maerith. And if she never releases it? Maerith answered before the priest could. Then it remains mine to decide. Lucan bowed his head once. Record that. The court watched the Dragon King lower his head to the woman they had called attached, jealous, dangerous, fraudulent. No one kneeled. Maerith was grateful for that. Kneeling would have made the room feel forgiven. It was not. Lucan turned back to the court. No crown in Vale may classify life-bound craft as transferable without donor verification read aloud before public witness. No donor will be treated as suspect for source access. No living flame will be contained as evidence if containment continues to drain the source body. His gaze moved to the cracked reliquary, then to Maerith's empty hands. I wore her last flame as medicine, he said. I offered it as ornament. I let suspicion stand between Maerith Vale and what remained of her own life. That was my failure before it was House Harrow's crime. Maerith's throat tightened. Not because it was enough. Because it was true. The flamestone pulsed inside the broken glass, steadier now, no longer dying inward. It did not fly to her. It did not restore her hands. It only burned low and living, still carrying a cost that could not be made beautiful by regret. The priest said softly, Mistress Vale, donor authority permits you to reclaim the vessel. Maerith looked at the necklace, then at Lucan. Not as a love, gift returned, she said. No, Lucan answered. Not as proof I belong beside you. No, not as repayment. His jaw tightened. Nothing can repay it. Good. At last. He had found a sentence that did not steal from her. Maerith stepped to the reliquary and opened the cracked glass herself. The wardens did not move. The court did not murmur. Even Isolde stayed silent as Maerith lifted the black gold necklace from the box. It warmed against her palm. Familiar. Painful. Diminished. Hers. I will keep it sealed under my authority, she said, until I decide whether any flame in it should remain bound to a crown that learned donor law only after burning the donor. Lucan accepted the blow with a slight bow. You choose. Isolde laughed once, bitter and broken. And that is justice? Letting her decide the king's protection? Maerith turned to her. No. Justice is that you no longer do. The line ended Isolde more completely than a scream could have. Guards escorted the bride heiress from the ash altar. She walked upright, because pride was the last garment she owned. Orwyn followed in chains of witness copper, carrying the torn strip he had hidden too late. When the court emptied, Lucan remained several steps from Maerith. He did not reach. He did not ask. He had learned the shape of restraint. "I cannot ask you to stay," he said. "No, I cannot ask you to love what I repaired too late. No." His eyes darkened with pain he did not try to spend. "Then I will make the law stand, whether you ever stand beside me again." Maerith looked at him for a long time. The man she loved had given away her heart because he never understood it had an owner. The king before her had finally named that crime in public. Both things were true. "I will remain in Vale through the donor law tribunal," she said. As maker, as donor, as the woman owed record, protection, and choice. A breath left him. "And after?" Maerith closed her hand around the necklace. The flame answered softly, not as a chain, but as a life still waiting for her decision. "After," she said, "you may ask me what I want before deciding what I am worth." Lucan bowed his head. Outside, dawn began touching the black arches of Vale with pale gold. For the first time since her last flame left her body, Maerith Vale walked out of the bridal court carrying her own name, her own truth, and the right to choose what survived of her heart.